वक्रतुंड महाकाय सूर्यकोटिसमप्रभा निर्विघ्नं कुरु मे देव सर्वकार्येषु सर्वदा। सरस्वती नमस्तुभ्यं वरदे कामरूपिणी विद्यारम्भं करिष्यामि सिद्धिर्भवतु मे सदा। गुरवे सर्वलोकानां विषये भवरोगिणां निधये सर्वविद्यानां दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। ईश्वरो गुरुरात्मेति मूर्तिभेदविभागिने व्योमवद्व्याप्तदेहाय दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्। श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करम्। साक्षात्कृतं दयानन्दं परमार्थस्वरूपिणं तत्त्वज्ञानप्रशास्तारं प्रणतोऽस्मि परं पदम्। ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः। You can repeat. वासुदेवेन्द्र योगीन्द्रम्
वासुदेवेन्द्रयोगीनं
नत्वा ज्ञानप्रदं गुरुम्
ज्ञानप्रदं गुरुं
मुमुक्षूणां हितार्थाय
मुमुक्षूणां हितार्थाय
तत्त्वबोधोऽभिधीयते।
तत्त्वबोधविधीयते।
साधनचतुष्टय सम्पन्नाधिकारिणाम्
साधनचतुष्टयसम्पन्नाधिकारिणां
मोक्षसाधनभूतम्
मोक्षसाधनभूतं
तत्त्वविवेकप्रकारम्
तत्त्वविवेकप्रकारं वक्ष्यामः।
साधनचतुष्टयं किम्
साधनचतुष्टयं किम्
नित्यानित्यवस्तुविवेकः
नित्यवस्तुविवेकः
इहामुत्रार्थफलभोगविरागः
इहामुत्रार्थभोगविरागः
शमादिषट्कसम्पत्तिः
शमादिषट्कसम्पत्तिः
मुमुक्षुत्वं चेति
मुमुक्षुत्वं चेति
नित्यानित्यवस्तुविवेकः कः
नित्यवस्तुविवेकः कः
नित्यवस्तु एकं ब्रह्म
नित्यवस्तु
एकं ब्रह्म
तद्व्यतिरिक्तं सर्वम् अनित्यम्
व्यतिरिक्तं सर्वम् अनित्यम्
अयम् एव नित्यानित्यवस्तु विवेकः
अयम्
यम् एव
नित्यवस्तु
नित्यवस्तु विवेकः
विरागः कः
विरागः कः
इह स्वर्गभोगेषु इच्छाराहित्यम्
इह
इह स्वर्गभोगेषु इच्छाराहित्यम्
शमादिषट्कसम्पत्तिः का
शमादिषट्कसम्पत्तिः
का
शमः दमः उपरमः
शमः
दमः उपरमः
तितिक्षा श्रद्धा समाधानं च इति
तितिक्षा श्रद्धा समाधानं च इति
शमः कः
शमः
कः
मनोनिग्रहः
मनोनिग्रहः
दमः कः
कः
चक्षुरादि इन्द्रियनिग्रहः
चक्षुरादि इन्द्रियनिग्रहः
उपरमः कः
उपरमः कः
स्वधर्मानुष्ठानम् एव
स्वधर्मानुष्ठानमेव
तितिक्षा का
तितिक्षा
शीतोष्णसुखदुःखादिसहिष्णुत्वम्
शीतोष्णसुखदुःखादि सहिष्णुत्वम्
श्रद्धा कीदृशी
श्रद्धा कीदृशी
गुरुवेदान्तवाक्येषु विश्वासः श्रद्धा
वेदान्तवाक्येषु विश्वासः श्रद्धा
समादानं किम्
समाधानं किम्
चित्तैकाग्रता
चित्तैकाग्रता
मुक्षुत्वं किम्
मुमुक्षुत्वं
किम्
मोक्षो मे भूयात् इति इच्छा
मोक्षो मे भूयात् इति इच्छा
एतत् साधनचतुष्टयम्
तत् साधनचतुष्टयम्
ततः तत्त्वविवेकस्य
तत्त्वविवेकस्य
अधिकारिणः भवन्ति
अधिकारिणः भवन्ति
We can mute your mic. The topic what we are discussing is sadhana chatushtayam. Why? Because the person who is endowed with sadhana chatushtayam is a person who is qualified, who is eligible for the pursuit of the study of Vedanta. And the benefit of this, the study of Shastram is moksha, freedom. Freedom is possible only by knowledge. Freedom is only by knowledge, not by any other thing. Jnanena eva mokshaha. Why? Because ajnanam is a cause for samsara. Samsara doesn't mean family. Samsara doesn't mean family. Samsara means, the word samsara can be interpreted in many ways. The best way to understand what samsara is, the life of becoming is called samsara. Nobody can make you a samsari. Even whether you have a family or independent, whether you live in the society or alone, somewhere even in the forest, even if you live in the forest, you can still be a samsari. Samsari is samsari who is dependent on the other things, other beings, who is dependent on the situations to be happy, to be contented, to be free, to be secure, to be at peace with oneself. Is happiness or peace or comfort depends on external things, external persons, external objects, situations. That person is a samsari. A family is not a samsari. Family cannot put you into samsara. You can live in the family and still be free. It is you dependent on the other things make you a samsari. Why you depend? Not that the things demand your dependence. You depend because you think that you have security, you have happiness when you gain or when you have those things. Therefore, nothing can make you a samsari really. Either your dependence or your wish to become something that make you a samsari. Either what you have now, either what you have, what you enjoy, what you possess can make you a samsari by making you dependent on that, or you wish to gain something, in future, thinking that it would give you pleasure, security and happiness, and that can put you into samsara. Thinking that it will give you all these things, you start working for that. You are not comfortable with what you have or what you are. So you want to be a better person. Therefore, you work. However much you work, you never feel comfortable with yourself. You keep on improving. Improving is not a bad thing. It is a good thing. But there is a pressure. There is a pressure inside. There is no space inside. You are not with yourself. That causes the problem. That is called samsara. A life of becoming is called samsara. You always want to become something. Become something to become contented, to become happy. You cannot become something to be happy. I am now in so and so position in my office. I'm not happy with my designation. So I think if I gain a higher post, I think I may be happy. But having gained that position also, you will not be happy. The same unhappiness continues because there is a comparison. You compare yourself with the next person who has got a better position. So you keep working on that. So there is always a pressure, and the pressure takes you for a ride. And you always, your whole life, you always try to become something. And this becoming that you think that you will be happy, that is called samsara. The life of becoming is called samsara. So therefore, if you analyze the reason behind all our actions, all our pursuits is, it is not that we pursue things out of the pleasure or out of passion or interest. Most of the things what we pursue in life, it's all because of the pressure, either internal pressure or the pressure from outside. The people around you may instigate you, may compare you with other person, and you feel probably inferior, and therefore work you work to become better. Even though working to be better in terms of improving your qualities, the values, the value systems, that is not wrong. But to work to become something with pressure, because of pressure, that's a problem. That creates a lot of stress, and that makes you lose your peace of mind. That makes you uncomfortable, dissatisfied, and results in a life of frustration, depression, anxiety, and all other problems, mental as well as physical problems. This is called as samsara. If you analyze the cause of all this thing, it is my ajnanam, my ignorance. The ignorance about myself is a cause for all this problem. Because I'm not happy with myself, I'm not happy with what I am now, therefore I work for it. I work to improve upon it. The I, the I, what you say, what you refer to yourself by the word I. The I only is Satyam. Anything which you add to I, that is not you. Anything which you add to the word I, they are all the superimposed attributes on I. The real nature of I cannot be improved. That is what you are. From the day you are born until the day you will be gone, the I remains the same thing. The I doesn't undergo any change. That is why even when you grow up, you feel the same I, the childhood I, and the adult I, you will feel the same I continues. You still identify with your childhood I. That I always is there. But whatever the attribute superimposed on I, that keeps changing. And therefore you say, I was, and I am now. And you say, I will. So that's I will is a problem. I will become is a problem. And I was, that is also a problem. Because one is thinking about the future, other one is thinking about the past. We never live in the present. I am. We never live in the present saying, I am. There it stops. Anything you add further, it's a problem. I am not intelligent. I am not fair. I am not qualified. I am not fit enough to do this a particular job. I am not respected. I am not wanted. I am not loved. Whatever you add, I am or I am not. I am saying that what you are. I am not saying that you're imposing all the complexes, whatever it may be. All these are the problem. These are samsara. Stop with I am, there is no problem. When I was 5 years old, that's I am. 10 years, I am. 15 years, I am. And 40 years, I am. 80 years, I am. So every moment of that time, this I am is there. In fact, this I am is alone, it is true. That continues every moment. The truth of every moment is this I am. I is you, and am is my existence. I continue to exist. I am. And whatever you add further to it, that causes the problem. Therefore, this I am cannot be improved. This I remains as it is. Before you become rich, the I was there. Now it has you become rich, the I doesn't become rich. The I is same. I am rich. I was poor, I am rich. I was stupid, now I am intelligent. This I remains same. And whatever this we impose, stupidity or intelligence, that's what you add to I, but I continues to be. But we never inquired into this, who this I is. We took it for granted that I, whatever it may be, and we try to work on it, to improve upon it. That is samsara. That is the problem. To becoming a better person, to transact with people around properly, to cultivate values, to cultivate good attitudes, to cultivate the lifestyle of spiritual pursuit, all those things are good because they are conducive for gaining the knowledge of this I. Apart from this, the I is the I am, I want, that is going to be a problem, and that is called this samsara. Therefore, the whole life is nothing but this changing of the attributes to I. So you work on improving the attributes superimposed on I, but I as such cannot be improved. So therefore, ajnanam is improving the attributes superimposed on I, that is samsara. Whereas I is you, that doesn't have samsara. It cannot be in samsara. I doesn't have samsara. Then where is samsara? Ajnanam is the cause for samsara. This ajnanam, this ignorance, the ignorance with regard to the idea of what I have about this I, that's a problem, and that is the cause of samsara. Therefore, the whole pursuit is understanding this I, and this I, this jivatma, this I is called jivatma. It is not a separate entity. It is not a separate being, poor being left alone. It is not different from Paramatma. This jivatma, who is recognized in this shariram, in this body, mind, sense complex, who interacts with the people around in the world, this jivatma is not different from Paramatma, who is the cause of this creation, the srishti. So jivatma is not different from Paramatma, Ishvara. This is the tatparyam of the Shastra. This is the truth. This is the fact revealed by the Shastra. This entire Jagat, the world is Bhagavan, Brahma Eva. Jagat Sarvam, Brahma Eva. Whatever you perceive, everything is Bhagavan. Ishavasya midagum sarvam yatkincha jagatyam jagat. It's a beautiful statement of the Ishavasya Upanishad. It says, Ishavasya idahum sarvam. The word idam. Idam refers to that other than you. Idam refers to this entire prapancha, this jagat. The word idam is used in Shastra to represent the jagat. Idam sarvam Isha. Isha vasyam idam sarvam. Everything is Ishvara. What is only Ishvara, only Bhagavan Eva. There are different forms, moving thing and non-moving thing. Everything is Bhagavan. Satyatyacha bhavat niruktam cha nilayanam cha vijnanam cha satyam chandutam cha satyam abhavat. Everything is Brahma. Whether it is Murta with the form or Amurta without form, whether it is Vyaktam manifest, whether it is Avyaktam non-manifest, everything is Brahma. Everything is Ishvara Eva. That Ishvara, who is the cause of this, the prapancha, is myself. Aham. Aham Brahma Asmi. This is the Tatparyam of the Shastram. Aham Brahma Asmi. I am that Brahma. The word Brahma is used by the Shastram, which is used by the Shastram to represent Ishvara, God. Brahma means Ishvara. The word Shastram uses that word, Brahma. The literal meaning of the word Brahma is limitless. It is from the dhatu, Brugi Vriddau dhatu. Vriddau. Vriddau means that which expands. Expansion. Expansion means limitless. That which is not limited. That is Brahma. So Bhagavan is not limited. Bhagavan is not limited. You cannot point out where Bhagavan is. Where Bhagavan is not. Everything is included in Bhagavan. Therefore, that you cannot say where is Bhagavan or who is Bhagavan. When we cannot point out where Bhagavan is or who Bhagavan is, since everything being Bhagavan, what about you, the individual, the Jivatma, the poor Jivatma who thinks himself to be a samsari? Who is he? When everything is Bhagavan, this person, the poor Jivatma also is Bhagavan only. Therefore, Jivatma Paramatma Eva. A pot is not different from clay. A pot made from clay, you see a pot with a name and a form. Nama, Rupa. Name, Nama. Rupa, form. A pot is made of clay. A pot is nothing but a form given to clay. And the form and the name, these are the attributes added to clay. These are attributes. These are the attributes added to clay. These attributes do not stick to clay forever. These are given, these attributes are given to clay temporarily. So a pot exists temporarily because a pot is nothing but a name and form, a nama rupa. But what pot is essentially clay only. Pot is not different from the clay. Similarly, you take a cup is not different from clay. A lid is not different from clay. A spoon is not different from clay. A tumbler is not different from clay. There's so many articles made from clay, but all these are, though they appear different in terms of names and forms, they're essentially the clay. So in the earthenware world, you see a lot of articles made of clay. But the truth of all those things is nothing but the clay. The real nature of the earthenware world is clay. If clay is not there, a pot is not. Clay is not there, pot is not. If clay is there, pot is there. If pot is not there, can we say clay is not there? We cannot say. A pot is not there, but clay continues to be. The clay continues to be in some other form, or it could be without form also. Doesn't undergo any form, any change. It remains as clay. So therefore, similarly, even though you see the whole prapancha made of different things and beings, they are not different from the truth, which is Ishvara, Brahma. So therefore, Brahma is limitless. Anantaha. Bhagavan is not limited. Bhagavan is unlimited. That which is unlimited is Bhagavan. That which is unlimited is Bhagavan, and unlimited cannot be fallible. Unlimited cannot be fallible. It is infallible. The infallible order, what you see in the prapancha, the Jagat, that is Ishvara. There is an order. There is an order at every level. At the individual level, there is an order. Physical order, mental order, psychological order, biological order. There is an order. That order is not different from the order at the total level. So that order which sustains the universe, the prapancha, which creates a universe, which sustains and which absorbs into it, that order, that is Ishvara, that is Bhagavan, and that is unlimited, not limited, not subject to any limitations, limitlessly big. That is what is referred to by the word Brahma. Limitless in terms of space, limitless in terms of time, limitless in terms of the presence of another thing, another object. Anything we perceive, we objectify in the world, it's because of these three things. An object is there. We ask, where is it? In which place it is located? At what time it is located? One is spatial location, other one is time-wise location. Without space and time, you cannot recognize anything, any object. And an object is distinctly recognized because of the presence of another object. A tree is there, a mountain is there. A tree is recognized because another thing is there, mountain is there. If there is nothing is there, only one thing is there, and that thing also is located, should be located in space and time, then that thing also, if it is not located in space and time, then you cannot recognize it. So anything what we recognize, it is recognized because of the presence of, either because of the presence of another object, or it is located in time, in a particular place. These are the limitations. Desha, Kala, Vastu, Parichinnaha. So anything what we observe, what we perceive with our sense organs, these are subject to these limitations. These are subject to limitations. What about this body? This body is limited or unlimited? What about the sense organs with what we operate in the world? What about the mind? Is it limited or unlimited? At the individual level, this shariram, body, mind, sense complex, they are all limited because it has got a locus. It has got a locus. It is located at a particular time. So spatial wise limitation, time wise limitation, and also vastu wise limitation. Another person, another object is there, therefore it is limited. Another person is there, therefore I am limited. I am limited because of the presence of the another person. My recognition of being intelligent is limited by the presence of another intelligent person. My acceptance of being a rich person is limited by the presence of another rich person. He is richer than me. Therefore, the presence of the second thing limits me. The presence of the second thing limits me. Therefore, the limitation is caused by space, time, and objects. But Brahma is not like that. It is unlimited. It is limitless. Doesn't have limitations. Doesn't have limitations. Let us understand this space-wise limitation. Yeah, an object is located at a particular place. An object is located. A book is on my table. A book is on my table. Where will you look? Where will you search for the book? It is on the table. It is not on my hand. It is not on my head. It is not kept even in the cupboard. It is on my table. So the book, the recognition of book on my table, you have to find the book only on my table. So that the presence of the book is limited in terms of space, spatially located. The book is spatially limited. At a particular time, it is located. The time is also limited. And because of the presence of other thing, the book is also recognized and therefore it is limited. Therefore, it means everything is limited in place, time, and objects. This is with regard to a gross object. What about the subtle objects? What about the subtle objects? The Pancha Mahabhuta, if you take, because these subtle objects are limited. What about this gross objects are limited? What about the subtle objects? The next question will come. The next question, I accept all the gross objects are limited, but the subtle objects are there. They are not limited. The Pancha Mahabhuta are not limited. And that too in the Pancha Mahabhuta, Akasha is not limited. Akasha is not limited in terms of space or time because it is all pervasive. The unlimitedness is recognized by its pervasiveness. If a thing is pervasive, then we accept it as not limited, unlimited. If it is all pervasive, it is unlimited. Agni is not all pervasive. Vayu is not all pervasive. Prithvi, earth is not all pervasive. Apaha, water, that is also not all pervasive. But when it comes to space, we think the space is all pervasive. The space is all pervasive. But really, is a space all pervasive? We have to think, if space is all pervasive, then space will become Brahma. That Akasha will become Brahma. If Akasha becomes Brahma, then you are Akasha, you are space. Are you space? No. Space is also limited only. Space is all pervasive. But the space also is created. That which is created is going to be limited only. The space is also created. Space is one of the Pancha Mahabhuta, Akasha. Shastram says, etasmat atmanah akasha sambhutah akashat vayuhu vayoragnihi agnerapah agnehe apah prithvi. So, Shastram says, from Paramatma, from Brahma, which is not different. That from Brahma, which is at the individual level, it is Atma. They are not different. From that, Akasha come into existence. It means space is also created. Space is also created. Space, even though it is all pervasive, but the presence of other things, Agni is there, Vayu is there, Apa is there. Therefore, it limits the space. The space is also not unlimited. It is limited only. So, even though we give the example of space, like the space, Bhagavan, that Brahma is all pervasive. Even though we give such examples, but this example has got limitation. You cannot give any example for Brahma. Brahma is limitless, not bound by anything. That which is not bound, how can you give an example to it? If you give any example, it is going to be limited. There is no parallel or equivalent example to it. Doesn't exist. It is because it is only one thing which exists. And how can you give another example? An example to understand that? It's impossible. But we need to understand. Therefore, we give Akasha as an example. Only under example. That is the limitation of examples. Any example you take, it is going to be limited. Therefore, even though space we use, but we have to understand the limitations of this drishtanta, this example of space. Even in our shloka, what we chant at the beginning of the class, we We chanted Vyomavat Vyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtahe Namaha. Vyomavat Vyapta Dehaya, like the space. Vyomavat, like the space. Vyapta Dehaya, the one whose Sharira, the body is pervaded. So does it mean space is Brahma? No. Space is limited. Space is limited. Whereas Brahma is the karanam of space. It is the cause of space. Therefore, it is unlimited. So, therefore, since space is also created, therefore, the karanam, sarva karanam, Brahma is alone, is limitless. That is why the word Brahma is used. Brahma means limitless. That limitless is Bhagavan. When we say limitless, does it have a beginning? Does it have a beginning? Brahma doesn't have a beginning. If it has a beginning, then it is not limitless. If it has a beginning, then it must have a cause, karanam. And that karanam must be bigger than Brahma, bigger than Bhagavan. Bhagavan doesn't have any karanam. Bhagavan is not produced by anything. If Bhagavan is produced, then he is not Bhagavan. We are limiting Bhagavan. So therefore, Brahma doesn't have a beginning. It is very difficult to conceptualize this theory, not theory, this truth of beginninglessness. Our mind is like that. It always thinks linearly. Something we take for our study, we think that it has a beginning. It should have started at a particular point and it must end. So beginning is there, ending is there. Birth is there, death is there. Coming into existence is there, and disappearing is there. This is what generally our thinking is. To think of beginninglessness, then we have to come out from this linear thinking. Brahma is beginningless. It is anadi. If it is a cause, since Brahma is the cause of everything, and it doesn't have a cause, then it must be anadi. It doesn't have beginning. Since it doesn't have beginning, therefore it is not created. If it is created, if Brahma has a beginning, then it must be created. If it is created, then it is limited in terms of time, because created at a particular time and created at a particular locus, space. If it is created, there must be creator. Another thing will be there. That is all these things going to the limitation. So every object you take, it is limited by this. But Brahma is not an object. It's not an object because it is limitless. And that limitless Brahma, it is Nityam. That Nityam, that which is limitless alone can be Nityam. Now the concept of, again, this is not a concept, the truth of what Nityam is, Brahma. Nitya Vastu Ekam Brahma. All these are words. When you say Nitya, that which is permanent, it can be only one, it cannot be two. But since we have the concept of many, therefore we have to say Ekam. All these are words for our understanding. For the understanding to happen, all these words are used by the Shastra. We say Brahma, there it stops. There need not be Ekam Brahma, only one Brahma. If there are two, we can say Ekam. But two is there. Where is the two? It is in your mind. You think many. Therefore, we have to negate that. Therefore, we say Ekam Brahma. We have this Dvaita Buddhi. We have this Dvaita Buddhi, that duality, the idea of duality. To negate that only we say Advaitam, non-duality. We don't say even oneness, we say non-duality. The subject-object difference is negated by Advaitam, non-duality. there are not two things. There is only one thing. Since we have the concept of two, therefore we have to say one thing. In fact, there is only thing. It is not a thing, it is Brahma, it is Bhagavan. And that is Nityam. So therefore, Nityam, that which is permanent, is Ekam only. That is, can be only one. There cannot be two. Therefore, Nitya Vastu Ekam Brahma. If it is one, it is Nityam. If it is one, and that is Nityam, fine. But I perceive so many things, so many things in the world. What about that? Sarvam Anityam. Sarvam Anityam. Tad Vyatiriktam Sarvam Anityam. Other than that, everything is Anityam. Anityam, that which is Anityam as its Ashraya only in Nityam. Anityam means that which is not permanent. Why it is not permanent? Because it is limited by Desha, Kala and Vastu. Desha, Kala, Parichinnaha. Desha, Kala, Parichinna. That is limited by place, time and Vastu, other objects. My house is Anityam. My car is Anityam. My job is Anityam. My relationships are Anityam. The Shariram is Anityam. Mind is Anityam. My Sukham, the pleasures are Anityam. My Dukkham also Anityam. The wealth what I enjoy is Anityam. The poverty out of which I suffer, that is also Anityam. Everything is Anityam. And all this Anityam as its basis, as its Ashraya in the Nityam. Like a pot is there, tumbler is there, plate is there, lid is there, cups are there. Are they all Nityam? They are nothing but the names and forms, mere names and forms. The name and the forms and the names attached to it. That's all. All these are Nityam? No. All these are Anityam. Why? Because that which is Nityam is clay. Minus clay, they don't exist. Therefore, all these are Anityam. When we say Anityam, that is the Nama Rupatmakam Jagat is Anityam, and this Anitya Jagat as its Ashraya, as its base in the Nitya Vastu Brahma. So Anityam, saying Anityam, when we dismiss, we have to understand that Anityam as existence because of this Nitya Brahma. That Anitya is not different from the Nitya Brahma. The Anitya is only an appearance in form, in a form, and has got a name. The name and form, what Anitya has, its Ashraya is on Nitya. So Anitya is not different from the Nitya Vastu, Brahma. That which is Anityam is not different from Brahma. So therefore, when we dismiss everything else as Anityam, that is, we are dismissing the reality given to those Anitya Vastus. We dismiss the apparent. We have given certain reality to those Anitya Vastu. That we dismiss. But the reality of all Anitya Vastus are the Nitya Vastu Brahma only. Therefore, all this Dvaita idea, the idea of duality is dismissed, is negated by saying Tat Gatiriktam Sarvam Anityam. So the whole Jagat, the entire Prapancha, which is a product, which is a Karya, which is a product, which is Karya, which is limited in terms of space, time. All these are Anityam. So we say this Jagat is Anityam. The Jagat comprising the cosmos, all the Milky Ways, galaxy, everything is Anityam. And the basis of this, the ashrayam of this anityam is the nitya vastu Brahma. What is manifest only is this entire prapancha, and what is still unmanifest. The unmanifest is with Bhagavan. What we see is only the manifest. And what about the unmanifest? That which has not come into existence. That is with Bhagavan. So Nityam as well as Anityam, everything, the Nityam as its basis in Anityam as its basis in the Nitya Vastu Brahma, that which is Avyaktam and Vyaktam, that which is Avyaktam, unmanifest, and that is which is Vyaktam. This Jagat is Vyaktam, manifest. This Avyakta and Vyakta as its basis, as its dependence on the Nitya Vastu, the Brahma. This universe, the entire universe, that is also Anityam. That is also Anityam Eva. Even though the universe is so big, the word Brahma, meaning limitless, that sometimes can be applied to the universe. Because the universe is unlimited, it is ever expanding. But Brahma is even bigger than that. Brahma is even bigger than that. The manifest universe and the unmanifest universe, both are in Brahma. Both are dependent on the Brahma. It doesn't have independent reality. Like a pot doesn't have independent reality. So too. Therefore, we say Sarvam Anyata. Anyata Sarvam. It means no exception. Everything else is Anityam. Everything else is Anityam. And this understanding which is born of the inquiry, that is called Nitya Vastu Viveka. That is called Nitya Vastu Viveka. So Nityam means that which is not bound by time, therefore not bound by space. Not bound by space and time, and therefore not bound by any presence of any objects. And what will be Anityam? Anityam is that which was not there before and it has come into existence now, and it will not be in the future. So not there before and it has come now, or it was not there and now also not there, it has gone, or it was there and it is continued to be now, or it was there, it is now, it will not be there. This is the nature of Anityam, Anitya Vastu. So anything what we gain through this Trivida Purushartha, Dharma, Artha, Kama, are they going to be Nityam or Anityam? They are Anityam, because it is gained in time and therefore it will be consumed in time. And that which is timeless, that is Brahma. Bhagavan is timeless. Bhagavan is called Kalaha. Bhagavan is Kalaha. Kalasyapi Kalaha. He is the Kalasya. Kala means time. Kala is time. Kala is Mrityu. Mrityu puts an end to the time limit. Mrityu puts an end to you. Mrityu means death. It puts an end. It means it limits you in terms of time. It takes away the life at a particular time. Therefore, Mrityu also can be referred to by the word Kala. And Kalasyapi Kalaha is Bhagavan. And since Brahma is not limited, therefore is Brahma is Kalasyapi Kalaha Bhagavan. Bhagavan who is not limited in terms of time. Time can devour anything, but time is also a product of, it is a karya, it's a product of Brahma. It has come from Brahma. As space has come from Brahma, similarly time also. So time is also limited only. Time is also limited. That which is unlimited is Brahma. this is the inquiry. This is the understanding born of this inquiry. And this is called Nitya Vastu Viveka. And the person who does such inquiry and understand, clearly discern what Nitya Vastu is, that person is called a Viveki. Viveki Purushaha. In Bhagavad Gita, you will find this, the word Dhiraha. Dhiraha is a word used to represent the Viveki Purushaha. Dhiraha literally means courageous person. Who is courageous? The one who has the courage to discern and understand this truth. He is called a Viveki. He is called a Viveki. And now this Viveka is what the first discipline to be gained in the pursuit of Vedanta. How to gain this? How to gain Viveka? Viveka is gained by the assimilation of the various anubhava, various experiences, what we gain as a human being in this world, starting from the time of birth and going on, what understanding we gain by the assimilation of the different experiences, various anubhava. That is called Viveka. That is called the Viveka. So this Viveka, our Shastram says, to gain this Viveka, which is the first and foremost qualification, to gain this Viveka, our Shastram presents a particular lifestyle. Our Vedic lifestyle is such that leading that lifestyle, it makes a matured person to pursue the Vedanta. The whole Veda is divided into two parts. We know Veda Purva and Vedanta. Veda Purva and the Vedanta. Veda Purva, that is the first part of the Veda, it prescribes a certain lifestyle. It recommends the values, the attitudes which a person has to follow, which a person in the beginning of the life has to observe, has to follow. And the Veda Purva, that is the lifestyle recommended by the Veda Purva, is for the Brahmachari, is for the Grihastha, is for the Vanaprastha. The three ashramas, they observe, they follow the Veda Purva. That is the Karmakanda portion of the Veda. Karmakanda portion of the Veda deals with karma. The last part, that is Vedanta, deals with Jnana, Jnana Kanda. To come to Jnana Kanda, it is only through Karma Kanda, only through the Veda Purva, it is possible. The knowledge part is dealt in the last portion of the Veda, that is called Vedanta. And in the first part of the Veda, it prepares a person. It prepares the person to come to Vedanta. The purpose of Karma Kanda is the preparation of the person to come to the Vedanta. In the beginning of the life, a person, a child, he studies the first part of the Veda, goes to the Veda Pathashala, studies the Karma Kanda. For 12 years, he studies Karma Kanda. It can be studied furthermore also. He studies Karma Kanda part of the Veda. He learns the mantras and he learns also the methods to do the Nitya Karma, Nimitika Karma, and gains the knowledge of the values, the attitudes that he must observe in the life. because the Karma Kanda portion teaches dharma. Dharma means karma. It teaches, it ordains you to do karma. Karma in keeping with dharma. Karma in keeping with dharma. So whatever is one's duty, one must do. Not doing duty, not doing, not observing, not following one's duty, that becomes a cause for adharma. Therefore, our Veda is very particular in insisting that one must do one's karma. Doing one karma is a dharma. Swadharma. Swadharma is very important. Swadharma is what is ordained by the Veda. So, if a person follows the Vedic lifestyle and does one's swadharma, one's duty, after Veda Patashala, after studying in the Gurukulam, then entering into the Grihastha and doing his karma in keeping with dharma, slowly the person, after some time, he gets maturity, he gets that pakvata, that eligibility to come to study and understand the Jnana Kanda part of the Veda. The first part of the Veda, it prepares a person. The person leading a Grihastha life, Brahmachari, Grihastha and Vanaprastha life, he gains that understanding. What understanding? This, he analyzes. He analyzes all the experiences he gains and understands the limitations. And understands the limitation. And that too, if he's a Vaidika, since he knows the meaning also, therefore, after some time, gaining certain pakvata, he comes to study the Vedanta. And when he is sufficiently matured, then Vedanta, then the Shastram recommends him to take sannyasa. This is the Vedic scheme of life. This is the Vedic scheme of life. So leading a Vedika lifestyle, a person naturally becomes matured and he comes to the Vedanta. Now, what is that Veda Purva teaches? What is its focus? The focus of Veda Purva is Karma Yoga. The focus of Veda Purva is Karma Yoga. This Karma Yoga is not only for the people following the Vaidika lifestyle. If it is only for the Vaidika lifestyle, then we cannot prepare ourselves for the study of Vedanta. We become anadhikari. We become disqualified to study Vedanta. This Karma Yoga is common for every person. A person leading a Vaidika lifestyle, or if it is a non-Vaidika, then also a person must observe, must follow Karma Yoga. That is why Bhagavad Gita, which is also considered to be a pramanam, one of the important text in the Prasthanatrayam. Prasthanatrayam, when we say Brahma Sutra, Upanishad, and Gita. Gita is a Vedanta Shastram. It's a Shastra, Moksha Shastra. The Gita teaches Karma Yoga. The Gita teaches Karma Yoga. Upanishads and all teaches only directly Brahma Vidya. Doesn't talk about karma. To study a Upanishad after following, Upanishad means Vedanta. To study Vedanta, a person leading a Vedika lifestyle, following the Veda Purva, naturally comes to Vedanta and studies that. But what about people like us? We come to Vedanta not through the study of Veda Purva, not following the karma prescribed by the Veda Purva, the Karma Kanda portion of the Veda. So what we do? For us, Bhagavad Gita helps. Bhagavad Gita greatly helps us to come to the study of Vedanta. Bhagavad Gita, it addresses this topic of becoming a adhikari for the pursuit of jnana by following karma yoga. That is the glory of Bhagavad Gita. That is the glory of Bhagavad. That is why Shankar Bhagavad Pada, he wrote a commentary, a bhashyam on Bhagavad Gita. He wrote commentary on Upanishad and Brahma Sutra and also Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita is located in Mahabharata. It is not a Shruti. It is a Smriti Grantha. Why should he write commentary on Gita? Because Bhagavad Gita is the only text which has the content of the whole Veda, Veda Purva as well as Vedanta. What the Upanishad doesn't address Karma Yoga and all. Karma Yoga, Upasana and all Upanishad doesn't address. Because that is addressed by the previous part of the Veda, Veda Purva. Therefore, Vedanta, Upanishad doesn't address that. The only Shastram what addresses is Bhagavad Gita. Therefore, the study of Bhagavad Gita is very important. Bhagavad Gita talks about Karma Yoga. The Karma Yoga is a sadhana. So Karma Yoga is a sadhana which is the means for accomplishing this Viveka. Which is the means for accomplishing this Viveka. So Viveka is achieved, gained through Karma Yoga. How Karma Yoga will help? How Karma Yoga will help in gaining Viveka? That we will see. We will see that in the next class. So we stop here. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.
धन्यवाद गुरुजी.
धन्यवाद
गुरुजी.
धन्यवाद गुरुजी.
धन्यवाद गुरुजी.
धन्यवाद गुरुजी.
धन्यवाद स्वामीजी.
धन्यवाद.